Joining me for our roundtable, Bill Burton, senior strategist with the pro-Obama Super PAC Priorities USA Action, USA Today, Washington Bureau Chief Susan Paige, CNN national political correspondent Jim Acosta, and the aforementioned Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform. I imagine you saw the debate?
I did get a chance to see it.
So let me just get your everybody's take on the vice presidential debate. We had polls that show, you know, nominally people thought Ryan won. Sorry.
The Al Gore imitation of the laughing and the smirking and acting like a 14-year-old while on camera. He was supposed to be the adult. He was supposed to wipe the floor with the guy who's 20 years younger than him. And I thought it was rude, abusive, and it didn't make the points he wanted to. Ryan got to make the points, and it showed up when you look at polls.
Let me go sort of directly to Bill for the counter and then get you on.
Well, I mean, the theatrical criticism of how Joe Biden responded to Paul Ryan's laughable performance in that debate, I think, doesn't get to the substance, which was that...
Would you rather he had to laugh less?
No, I think that for most Americans, Paul Ryan say things like, American troops should do the job that Afghan troops should do. I think people were throwing things at their television, not just laughing and throwing their hands up at what Paul Ryan was saying. On the substance, I think you can get a pretty good sense of how Republicans think that Joe Biden did if their main critique is his face gestures and how he moved his hands.
You know, I think Joe Biden did what Democrats needed him to do, which was to stop the hand-wringing over the disappointing job that President Obama had done the week before. But in the end, I don't think this debate really matters. The debate that matters is the one that's coming up Tuesday. And what President Obama do we see there? Do we see one that's more energized and more willing to push back against the points that the presidential candidate, Mitt Romney, is making?
And let me bring back one of the points that we know the president's going to push back on, and it's something, it's kind of what a lot of people see as a change in Mitt Romney over the course of the past month or so. This is something he said on September 26th, and it's about tax cuts.
By the way, don't be expecting a huge cut in taxes, because I'm also going to lower deductions and exemptions. But by bringing rates down, we'll be able to let small businesses keep more of their money so they can hire more people.
Now, without like going into the weeds of the money and the $5 trillion and the this and the that, do you, I mean, you're the master of the tax pledge and no new taxes. Does that fit your bill? By the way, I'm not actually promising you a tax cut. It might just come out even.
Yeah, and the only confusion is people who don't understand.
Fine with you, sorry.
Yeah, look, he wants to reduce marginal tax rates across the board for all Americans 20%, which is what Reagan did, which is what John F. Kennedy did. He also wants to do what Reagan did in '86, which is to have it aimed towards revenue neutrality, both with economic growth, job creation as Reagan and Kennedy gave you, and eliminating some unnecessary deductions and credits, all the cylinder tax credits that have funneled money to the administrations, not help the economy. Let's get rid of those kind of corrupt deductions and credits and raise some money at the same time. But net, it's going to be a revenue neutral at worst or a tax cut.
Part of what happened in the first debate, I think, and this will wrap back into the tax issue, is that people saw Mitt Romney and somehow thought, oh, he's not this scary person we've seen in the ads. You know, he seemed reasonable. He seemed like he knew his stuff. I mean, it wasn't just that the president seemed to have done badly. It was that Mitt Romney seemed to have done himself some good. So how does the president take this tax issue and move it forward on Tuesday?
Well, on taxes, I think that Romney is actually a lot closer to George W. Bush than to Ronald Reagan. In comparison, when you consider Ronald Reagan was actually willing to raise taxes, and the spike in growth that you saw in the 80s came after a big tax hike. What Mitt Romney is saying is, no, we can't make the wealthy pay more of their fair share. What we have to do is just cut taxes for everybody, cut taxes for corporations, and by doing that, by making sure that the people at the very top do better, somehow that'll trickle down. What we know is that that doesn't work.
Jim, on the campaign trail, are you hearing a lot of chatter as well about the moderate Mitt? We've heard Bill Clinton took him on saying, oh, the moderate Mitt is back. Oh, and it sort of comes off the president's post-debate thing about he's lying. That's not what he said. He's completely changed. A, has he completely changed, or are they, as we call, putting emphasis on a different syllable?
I put this question to a senior Romney advisor, and the way he put it, and he pushed back on the notion that the governor is moving back to the middle. He said that the governor is talking about bipartisanship more now that he's got this big audience through all of these debates, and that may strike the Obama campaign as being wishy-washy or moving to the middle. But the Romney campaign says, no, this is what Mitt Romney did when he was governor of Massachusetts. He governed as a conservative. Now, a lot of people may say that's not true, but he did work with the Democratic legislature in Massachusetts, and they say that is one of his strong telling points heading into the rest of this campaign. But as for the issue of tax cuts, I mean, I think one thing that has not been answered by the Romney campaign and not by Paul Ryan at that debate the other night is how they pay for these tax cuts. Mitt Romney has been given this opportunity on a number of occasions. He just won't specify. He talks about these deductions and loopholes that will be closed or eliminated, but there aren't any specifics as to how to pay for those tax cuts.
And in fact, isn't there, and I want you to take that on, because isn't there some kind of mathematical formula that if you close all those loopholes, just close them all, you still can't pay for that kind of 20% tax hike? Is that not true?
Well, the most important thing, no, you could always do something along those lines, but the most important thing is that you want to have economic growth. If our economy had grown since the bottom of this recession, as Reagan's did, we'd have 10 million more Americans at work today than we do. Reagan had a pro-growth, low-tax rate, spend less, not more, and deregulate approach. Obama did the opposite, and we've seen the worst recovery since World War II. So the most important thing you can do to bring in revenue to the government is to have more people working. That's why the lower tax rates bring in more money, not by closing every single deduction or credit. That's how the Democrats would want to do it, I understand. But by having more growth and more jobs.
So bottom line, Bill, is they're saying you close some of the loopholes and the rest will be made up in growth in the economy and increase. Yeah. Therefore, more people will be working. Therefore, more people will be paying taxes, and you're done paying for the $5 trillion.
Right, except for the fact that no credible economist says that that is actually possible without magic or some wizardry or something that
Reagan did it, Kennedy did it. They weren't magic.
It exploded under Ronald Reagan.
And keep in mind that the growth over the course of the Reagan presidency was only about 3.4%, which is only slightly better than it was the previous 8 years before that. What Mitt Romney is talking about is instituting a tax cut plan, which would actually force taxes on the middle class to go up. One of the studies that Mitt Romney cites by Feldstein actually says that if you do raise taxes 100,000 to 200,000 bracket, you could pay for this whole tax plan. It doesn't make sense.
There has been a change in tax policy, stated tax policy, and that's Obama's. 4 years ago, he said he would not allow any tax increase on anyone who earned less than $250,000 a year, ever. That was the promise. Now, he's broken it about 20 times with a series of tax increases.
In health care and places like that.
In health care, yes. But he's changed his position. August 8th, Grand Junction, Colorado, and 6 times since, he said, my plan is I won't raise your income taxes in the next year if you earn less than $250,000. He said this enough times that it's a big signal. What is it? He's only promising not to raise your income taxes, a value-added tax, excise taxes, other things. 2, the promise is good for 213. In 214, this President of the United States has promised nobody that he won't raise their taxes. There's a reason he's opening that door.
Susan, we all know this election's about the economy, but that encompasses so much. Is this tax issue, what's going to happen to your taxes, is that playing large? Is that playing small? What is that? Is that a driver of votes?
You know, the bigger issue, I think, is jobs. Who's going to create jobs than the specific issue of taxes? Tax is always a powerful issue with people. I think President Obama, will try to push back against the Mitt Romney plan. He'd be in a better position if he was presenting more details about his own proposals, what plan he would have moving forward on tax reform, on job creation, on the economy. Maybe we'll hear more of that.
Jim, when you look at Mitt Romney on the stump now, as opposed to Mitt Romney, I think we said it sort of in the beginning, he seems to have, at this moment, the momentum that has eluded him through much of this. Is there a change in him? Do you feel it at all, or is this just debate-driven?
Candy, when Mitt Romney came to the back of his campaign plane the other day and handed out quarter-pounders to the press corps, that seemed to give us a sign that, yes, he's about this campaign these days. And you do see that out on the campaign trail. And I think one of the other things to note here, Candy, is that he has always run a very disciplined campaign. He's not always a disciplined candidate. Things pop out of his mouth that make his advisors go crazy. But all of that discipline, I think, is paying dividends now in the final stretch of this campaign. He's been going into intense debate prep. A lot of people said, hey, wait a minute, why are you doing that more than being out on the campaign trail? It's starting to pay off in this final stretch.
Right, and he's going to face a different President Obama, I think, as we know. I got to end it there. Bill Burton, and you. Susan Paige. I looked at you and thought, Susan Paige, Jim, and thank you so much, Grover Norquist, for being with us.
Good luck on Tuesday.
Thank you.